unified, easy-to-manage platform. You want Chainstack, an enterprise-grade blockchain platform as a service. Chainstack helps you build, deploy, and manage networks on cloud or on-prem, and on a variety of protocols, because enterprises have unique requirements. And when it comes to blockchain protocols, there's simply no one-size-fits-all. Chainstack combines powerful wizards on its front end and complex orchestration at the back end, so you can easily bring up, configure, provision, and manage your networks in a few clicks. Create permission networks like Fabric, Corda, Multichain, Quorum, and more to come. Or launch a node on a public chain such as Ethereum. And that's not all. Form and scale consortiums without any special configuration or long-winded policy, all the while ensuring security, from the infrastructure and website layers to on-chain and off-chain. Simply put, with Chainstack, you can take your blockchain projects to market faster, be several times more productive, and leverage network effects. Chainstack, designed to help you get the most value out of blockchain in the simplest way possible.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, beautiful. So as I was preparing for this presentation today, I was trying to think of how I could actually give you a good overview on how blockchain and IoT technology converged and what kind of benefits industries, businesses, and people are going to take out of it. So in the next 20 to 25 minutes, I'm going to try to explain to you how we contribute to this process and how we are part of the ecosystem and community that's building and making IoT development and consortiums possible. So before I start, let me ask you who in the room, who in the ring, we're almost in a ring, knows about or deals with IoT today in his own daily life? No one deals with IoT? You came to IoT conference, you don't, no one, okay, good. Who's dealing with blockchain? IoT, that's amazing. All right, so that's for the others. So let me start by how the journey started, and maybe it will give you some insight on why IoT and blockchain are compatible and how they enable each other. So you probably realize that we are in this third era of computing platform, right? The first era was the the mainframe era. The second era in the 80s was actually the client-server era. And now we have entered this beautiful era called cloud computing. And what's really interesting in reality in the way those eras have succeeded themselves is that it took about 50 years to move from the basic computing power created and the basic computing architecture created 50 years ago all the way to the cloud in the early 2000s. Now you know that our industry, the IT industry, is very keen on marketing concepts and ideas that they push and market to all of us. So recently, they came up with a new way of explaining what revolutions are basically coming along based on the cloud computing era. And they actually call this at 4IDC, but Gartner and other foresters have their own ways of explaining and describing the greater trends of what's going to happen to us in the next 20 years. So in general, you could say that you basically have a couple of things happening right now, which are due to the ability of us leveraging the cloud. So mobile revolution and big data revolution and the social revolution and the sharing economy have clearly transformed the way the industry, the way the businesses, and the way we behave on a daily basis. Now, the wave or the revolution we're in today is actually quite interesting because it combines 4 different technologies. One would be AI, artificial intelligence, and 2 of the very interesting technology for today's topic, which are blockchain and IoT, together with natural interfaces, which is basically our ability to interact with systems in a very natural way by language processing and natural language processing. The third revolution that's going to start in the next few years is going to be all about automating and autonomous vehicle devices and tools that are going to make our life easier. Now let me come back on the second revolution, which is really interesting because both blockchain and IoT are part of this second revolution, and in fact, they kind of enable themselves or each other or complement themselves very nicely. So what I'm going to try to do in the next 15 minutes is walk you through this example and basically explain to you how they converge and what benefits you and your business should actually take advantage of. First, the first thing you should remember is that you have an acceleration of innovation, right? You remember my first wave was about 50 years. The second wave, the wave I'm talking about today, that's going to go all the way from mobile computing to autonomous vehicle, is going to be less than 20 years. In fact, we are almost at the end of the second stage of this revolution and at the beginning of the third development. And that's actually very, very fast. I mean, if you think about the amount and number of technologies that have been created in very, very short period of time, it makes it interesting to understand how companies like yours or businesses like yours can actually adopt this technology. So more and more, we're looking at automation to manage acceleration, right? It's very easy to say there is this new technology, but it needs to be adopted, needs to be implemented, it needs to be deployed, and it needs to be placed in production, which takes time because we are involved in this process. So more and more, this acceleration is forcing us and our businesses to automate processes and relationship between parties, vendors, customers, and suppliers. And in fact, it's no mistake that IoT is probably the number one enabler of this better collaboration between businesses. And the reason for that is because IoT contributes to the fact that our life is becoming more and more digital. In fact, most of what we do today, whether it's productivity-based, whether it's finance-based, whether it's based on our needs, depends on digital data. And a lot of this comes from IoT and IoT devices. A lot of the data are being digitalized today, whether permanently or for a punctual reason, for a specific reason, actually comes from IoT. It goes from drones to Internet of Things to robots, big data, cryptocurrencies, and others. Now, what's interesting with this development is that almost all our personal and business life today is already digital. Almost all processes of businesses are digital. And almost everything about us is digital. We have digital wallet, we have digital data on our phone, we share digital data through the internet, and we are now entering the second stage of basically digitalizing or digitizing the physical world, right? Cameras and various sensors and devices will basically make everything around us more and more digital so that we can use it. And IoT contributes to this acceleration. The last stage of the production of this era, which is going to be fascinating, is how we are going to digitize the nature around us, right? Not tools and manufacture goods, but essentially everything that is around us, from trees to crops, so that we can track literally everything. So as a result, it kind of raises a question, which is if everything is going to be digitalized, and if everything is basically trackable and stored and managed, then how are we going to manage security and protection around this data? And if you stop by any of the booths in this beautiful exhibition today, and you ask them how they manage security for IoT data, they will all come up with a specific way for them to protect the way data goes from one place to the other, or the way data is being shared from one supplier or one partner to another. And that's actually very key, because as the amount of data we are creating is just getting out of hand, the security of this data and also the cycle of where this data goes before being stored or being secured is actually a very lengthy process, and actually complexifying the way you, or the process you need to put in place so that your data will truly be protected. Privacy is also important for us right? We all going to soon wear IoT sensors that will give us information about our health, about the temperature, about things happening around us. And I doubt that we would like this information to be shared with multiple people in some open fashion. Finally, compliance and authenticity of this data is also going to become a concern. You probably read a lot of articles and news in the past 2 to 3 years about fake news or about fake information that people tend to adapt and basically make their own and believe to be the real truth. I think what's interesting in this idea is that more and more we are going to start questioning where data come from, whether this data is genuine, whether anyone tampered with this data, and whether this data is actually an original and true data that you can rely on. And this is not only true for IoT, this is true for every single data that we're going to produce. Now, because data is everywhere, in the age of IoT, we're basically being empowered by data. I was listening to the person in charge of the Indonesia Economic Ministry just before my presentation, and he was saying that in Indonesia today, you have about 400 million IoT devices. Right here on my slide, I have 20 billion, which comes from Gartner, so which is kind of, I think, pretty reliable. If you have 400 million devices in IoT devices in Indonesia, it probably means we'll have trillions of IoT devices around the world. And that raises a question around what is it that we're not going to be able to track. Because in reality, what IoT gives us access to is an amazing level of detail that we use not to be able to access, not to be able to sort, select, and analyze. And that's really important because this is an opportunity for every business to basically optimize processing, manage inventory better, streamline processes with different groups of partners, suppliers, and customers. And this opportunity transforms into revenue opportunity for all of us. So it's not only about collating data, it's also about being able to analyze this data and making sure that this data is genuine. And that's when blockchain comes into play. Blockchain comes into play because the value of blockchain is when you basically share confidential information among multiple parties. So now if you think about any IoT implementation today for any type of businesses in healthcare, in supply chain management, in manufacturing, you probably assemble many different parties collaborating together so that information about a particular product or a particular good can actually be transferred and shared in a proper way so that you can do everything I mentioned just before, optimizing processes and basically make customer happier and generate more revenue. Blockchain proposes a way for any system and any network to guarantee authenticity, to provide transparency and traceability, which is addressing one of the pressing problems that IoT and large IoT networks and consortium could actually create going forward. So that's why blockchain and IoT are doing so well together. In fact, it's a decentralized solution for a distributed system. IoT systems tend to be very distributed. You have sensors providing information to central points providing information to more points and to more people. And this chain by itself can basically be more secure, safer, more transparent, more traceable, thanks to blockchain and various blockchain protocol around. So that's really the promise of the convergence of these two technologies, which I think are interesting. So blockchain is not really a technology as a standalone. It's a technology that will enable IoT to perform better, to enhance security better. And this is why it's important, because it will allow you to connect and collaborate, expand your network. And I'd like to make a pause here and spend a few minutes on the concept around network, which is at the core of blockchain, but also at the center of what IoT systems are all about. Let me take a simple example of how a goods is basically being produced, managed, shipped, packaged, and distributed in a traditional model. And then let me spend a few minutes to walk you through the benefits of what IoT provides to this food chain and what the combination of IoT and blockchain can actually help optimizing and making the process a seamless process. So in the traditional process, in all our businesses today, we have a lot of friction. A lot of friction because we are traditionally very manual and manual processing focused. So when we receive some document, we have to check this document, we have to process it, maybe we have to do something, amend it, tune it. And along the supply chain management, as an example, you have a lot of different actors that are going to play a manual role in the way the documents or the goods or the process or the product can actually be moved so that it can be distributed to the end user. All this friction could be at the consolidation or the payment side, paying for a particular product in a different country. It could be at the transportation stage, being able to track the product. Let's say it's a fresh product. You want to track that it's going to remain in the cold chain for 100% of the time. It's going to be at the custom, another friction point where you need to go through a process through some proxy and providers that will help you to go through customs. And then it can be at the shipping stage, it can be at the warehouse and distribution. Now, what IoT has helped to do is streamline some of these processes and help to automate some of these processes. One of them is being able to track the product, prioritize which product needs to be distributed first, or basically efficiently routing product and tracking product across complex roads and supplier ecosystem. Now, let's move to the perfect use case of a particular product being produced with limited friction thanks to IoT and blockchain. You can basically think about real-time traceability. You can think of transparency in the way you track this information and genuine information about the product itself that reduce the chance for fraud, that reduce the chances for delays, that reduce the potential friction of having your product being touched by multiple parties. So what you're essentially doing with IoT and blockchain, you're basically providing transparency that enables you to track your product and your goods across every single player. And blockchain is here to help you to automate the process between these different players. As a result, you can actually optimize the entire process and build amazing, intelligent supply chain systems that are simply by definition give you a better return on investment and optimized time and higher quality product and happier customer. So that's really what IoT and blockchain are trying to do right now. And you could basically think of it as a simpler way to connect people and networks. So here on my right side, you would have a typical ecosystem sharing information and sharing goods together and all the friction point that I was discussing a little bit earlier. And on my left side, you would have the same ecosystem probably moving things and goods faster in a more automated way using blockchain and IoT. So that's kind of a nice representation of how you could think of simplifying the way IoT and blockchain are organized. So I talk about supply chain, but you have a lot of industries that are actually impacted, in a positive way by the convergence of these two technologies. Healthcare, government certainly, the oil and gas industry, the transport and logistic industry, the manufacturing industry. Every industry now is benefiting from the convergence of this technology. And they kind of start collaborating together, right? I mean, manufacturers start collaborating not only with their suppliers and customers, and vendors, but also with customers, providing better feedback from their product directly to themselves from the customers. So that's kind of an interesting concept. Now, many actors, many systems, a lot of data. What really we're trying to do here is we're trying to answer the question of, as we are more and more people to collaborate and share information about our products, how can you trust that this information is genuine? How can you provide a single source of truth? And how can you organize traceability so that every customer will know that this product is a genuine product and this product comes from XYZ factory as it should? So that's what we call, and that's how we introduce the concept of consortiums. As we are collaborating and partnering more and more with people we do business with on a deeper level of integration, sharing data that are kind of sensitive about our product and the way they're manufactured, and about how they're being distributed, and the stock level and inventory level of our production, then what we want to do as well is we want to make sure that we have a framework to collaborate. So we call this consortium. Many of you know existing consortiums that exist. I'm sure you somehow deal with them. You have a few that I'm sure everybody knows, like Airbus. The plane maker used to be a consortium and it's still kind of a consortium. SWIFT, that enables us to transfer payment around the world, is a consortium of 11,000 banks. And here, you have a lot of consortium in the supply chain or in the food industry that are basically a group of people that used to compete together and now start collaborating. So what we are trying to leverage here is what we call the network effect. So I'm sure you remember I mentioned it's great because we have a better network and a greater network. So now let me tell you why having a greater network of people you work with is fundamentally better and provide more opportunity. Well, it's a basic law. It's called the network effect. If you have basically 4 users, you have 6 possible connections. If you have 8 users, you have 28 potential connections. Those connections are as many opportunity for you to improve, find better supplier, optimize in some different ways. So managing this network is going to be done through consortiums. And in the next few years, you're going to start reading a lot about how these consortiums of different industries, as well as vertical industries, start building up, collaborating, and increasing. Now, what Chainstack does, what the company we created in Singapore a year ago does, is it basically helps people and companies to run these consortiums, to build them and administrate them from a technical standpoint. So today you can use any blockchain protocol, deploy your network of IoT nodes or IoT services into one of these protocols on the cloud or on-premise, and build and invite members to your consortium. The problem we solve and the problem we address in this concept is basically making ecosystem and consortiums work together in a fully trusted manner without having to rely on a central authority. So the concept of being able to come and explore and experiment with different blockchain, as well as scaling those deployments for IoT or other industry into consortium and larger consortium, is basically a fantastic opportunity to improve partnership and collaboration across different industries. So that's a journey we have started. We were founded in Singapore in 2018. We experienced a tremendous growth of the team. Today we have quite a few people in production and doing proof of concept with us, and hundreds of potential partners we're working with. If you are one of them, or if you are interested to know more about what Chainstack does and how we can help your business or partner with you to improve business of other companies, please come to me, visit our website, Ashley is also at the back here if you have any question, and I'll be very happy to go into more detail, including technical detail of what I describe and discuss with you today. On that, I would like to thank you very much for listening to me for the last 25 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laurent. The next session will commence in a few minutes.